The birth of the Premier League, 1992 to 93. The summer of 1992 felt different in England. Not because of the weather or politics or culture, though plenty was changing on those fronts too. It felt different because football, the country's heartbeat, was about to undergo the most dramatic transformation since the game was first codified in the 19th century. Something big was coming, something bold, something that would reshape the sport forever. And yet, if you picked up a newspaper in early August 92, you wouldn't see anyone trying to romanticize it. The headlines were blunt. Breakaway is complete. Sky signs £304 million deal. Football League era ends. It sounded corporate, ruthless, almost cold. But this is the story of how a deal, a dream, a disagreement, and a generation of fearless players collided to create the single most globally watched sporting league in the world. This is the story of the inaugural Premier League season. The rumbling before the storm. Long before August 92, before the shiny new logos and Sky cameras and money that seemed almost unreal at the time, English football had a problem. The 1980s had been brutal. Stadium disasters, financial instability, violence, crumbling infrastructure, stagnant wages. Even the giants, Liverpool, Manchester United, Arsenal, were operating inside limits that felt too small for the modern age. By 1990, conversations in boardrooms grew louder. The big clubs wanted more money, more control, more modernity. They wanted a product that matched Italy's glamour, Spain's swagger, even Germany's efficiency. And in October 1990, the Football Association quietly slipped a sentence into a report titled Blueprint for the Future of Football. A new idea, a breakaway, a Premier League. To the FA, it was modernization. To the Football League, it was betrayal. To fans, it was confusing, almost abstract. But to the richest, most ambitious clubs, it was oxygen. Manchester United, Arsenal, Tottenham, Liverpool, Everton, Aston Villa, Leeds. The weight of their names alone tilted the scales. The breakaway became reality. 22 clubs agreed to step out of the Football League, leaving behind a century of history. On the 27th of May 1992, the Football League First Division, the top tier since 1888, ceased to exist as the home of English football's elite. A new world had begun. The most important contract in British sports history. Enter Sky Television. People forget that Sky in 1992 wasn't an institution. It wasn't even stable. It was young, risky, and bleeding money. Betting on football was either genius or disastrous. Rupert Murdoch believed it was genius. On the 18th of May 1992, Sky and the BBC locked in a broadcasting contract worth £304 million, a jaw-dropping sum at the time. It was the biggest rights deal in British sports ever signed. Some club chairmen barely understood what satellite TV was. Others wondered if enough people even owned dishes. But the check was signed. With this money, the league could modernize. Clubs could invest. Stadiums could improve. Players could be paid properly. Television, once considered football's enemy, became its lifeline. But not everything was smooth. A proposed £13 million title sponsorship from Base was rejected by 8 clubs, leaving the brandless FA Premier League without an official sponsor. No sponsor, but plenty of cash and plenty of ambition. The summer of big money and big names. If you wanted a sign of change, you didn't need a business report. You needed the transfer market. The first seismic shock came from Blackburn Rovers. Blackburn, a club returning to the top flight after almost 3 decades, broke the British transfer record by signing Alan Shearer for over £3 million. It was insane. Absurd. A number of fans talked about with disbelief down at the pub. But Blackburn had Jack Walker, a steel magnate with deep pockets and deeper dreams. And the Premier League, even in its first breaths, was already showing what money could do. Other major transfers followed. David Rocastle to Leeds, Dean Saunders to Aston Villa, Teddy Sheringham to Spurs. Sheringham's move turned out to be especially symbolic. He scored the first televised Premier League goal for Nottingham Forest, then was sold. His 21 goals for Tottenham ultimately made him the league's top scorer. Football was changing fast. Names, prices, expectations. Everything was bigger, louder, and more dramatic. A league of 22. Old structure, new soul. The structure of the competition was familiar. 22 teams, 42 matches per club, home and away. Just like the old First Division. But the feel of it was different. The Premier League had new branding, new coverage, new narratives, new expectations. The big screens, studio panels, and Monday Night Football setups made it feel almost American. People joked about it, mimicked it, some even hated it. But secretly, everyone watched. Ipswich Town, Middlesbrough, and Blackburn arrived from the second division. Luton, Notts County, and West Ham went down. For the first time, the Premier League became a phrase people actually used in casual conversation. Hash the unlikely early leaders. Norwich City. When the season kicked off on the 15th of August 1992, nobody, absolutely nobody, expected Norwich City to lead the league. But football loves chaos, and Norwich embraced it with open arms. Mike Walker, in his debut season as manager, turned a humble squad into giant killers. They didn't dominate anyone. They didn't overwhelm. They just figured out how to win. Even with a negative goal difference, something analysts still shake their heads at, Norwich spent months sitting top of the table. Players like Mark Robbins and Ruel Fox delivered huge moments. Carrow Road buzzed with belief, but ultimately a brutal 3-1 loss to Ipswich in the final weeks ended the dream. Norwich fell to third, still securing European qualification, an incredible accomplishment. The team of destiny, Manchester United. Meanwhile, Manchester United, the club that seemed cursed to finish second, were struggling. By October, they were in mid-table. The pressure on Alex Ferguson was enormous. The ghosts of lost titles lingered. Fans were anxious. Rivals were smirking. Then, in November, a Frenchman arrived. Collar up. Swagger sharp. Confidence impossible to ignore. Eric Cantona. The moment he stepped onto the Old Trafford pitch, Manchester United shifted from a strong team to a terrifying one. United lost just 2 league games after his arrival. Cantona didn't just score goals. He changed the energy, the tempo, the belief. His leadership elevated Ryan Giggs, Mark Hughes, Paul Ince, the whole squad. By spring, United were unstoppable. They finished the season 10 points clear, securing their first league title in 26 years. If the Premier League needed a superstar to carry its debut season, Eric Cantona delivered. The Blackburn fairy tale. Cut short by injury. Blackburn Rovers were the league's other great story. They didn't just return to the top flight, they came to win it. With Shearer scoring 16 goals before Christmas, Blackburn briefly topped the table. Then tragedy struck. Shearer tore his cruciate ligament, a brutal, season-ending injury in that era. Blackburn's goals dried up. Their title push tapered off. But even without their talisman, they finished fourth, an extraordinary achievement. It was the beginning of a journey that would take them all the way to the title in 1995. The fall of a giant, Leeds United. No one could believe what happened to Leeds United. The reigning champions collapsed. 17th place. No away wins. Chaos everywhere. In the space of a year, they went from the best team in England to a club scrambling for answers. The Premier League wasn't just new, it was unforgiving. The end of an era. Brian Clough's final season. Down at the bottom, Nottingham Forest were crumbling. The sale of key players like Des Walker and Teddy Sheringham shattered the foundation of a once great club. Forest slipped to last place and stayed there. When relegation became reality, something far more emotional followed. Brian Clough, the most charismatic, unpredictable, and iconic manager in English football history, announced his retirement. 18 years at Forest, 2 European Cups, a league title, 4 League Cups, a personality like no other. His departure felt like the end of an era, because it was. The survival miracle, Oldham Athletic. At the other end of the table, drama exploded on the final day. Crystal Palace needed a win to survive. Oldham needed a miracle, and Oldham delivered. A wild, unbelievable 4-3 win over Southampton kept them in the league by a single point. Palace went down. Oldham lived to fight another year. The Premier League was barely born, and it was already giving football its trademark chaos. The goals, the records, the stars. 1,222 goals were scored, still a record for any Premier League season, thanks in part to the higher number of matches. Teddy Sheringham finished top scorer with 22. Paul McGrath won PFA Player of the Year. Chris Waddle returned from France and lit up Sheffield Wednesday. Ryan Giggs, teenage superstar, won Young Player of the Year again, and a league medal. Wimbledon, playing in front of the lowest crowd in Premier League history, just over 3,000, still finished safely in mid-table. Big clubs faltered, small clubs surprised, new storylines emerged everywhere. The league table that started it all. Manchester United stood atop the table with 84 points. Aston Villa followed. Norwich, Blackburn, QPR shockingly high. Liverpool shockingly low. Leeds shockingly worse. At the bottom, Oldham survived. Palace, Middlesbrough, and Nottingham Forest went down. This first Premier League season wasn't polished. It wasn't perfect, but it was unforgettable. A new era begins. In May 1993, as Manchester United lifted the trophy and fireworks exploded at Old Trafford, few realized what had truly begun. That moment didn't just crown a champion. It launched a global phenomenon. The Premier League would grow into a multi-billion-pound empire, a worldwide broadcast giant, a cultural export as iconic as the Beatles or James Bond. And it all began with a breakaway, a TV deal, a Frenchman in a turned-up collar, and a season filled with chaos, brilliance, heartbreak, and transformation. The inaugural Premier League season wasn't just a competition. It was a rebirth, a new era, a new vision, a new football world. And 30 years later, the echoes of 1992-93 still shape the game we watch today.